Welcome to the Point of View Show. My name's Andrew Tran. I'm your host. This show highlights business professionals in Asia and around the world to get an understanding on what makes them effective, how they do it, and advice to help you grow in leadership, branding, marketing, and sales. For more information, head over to my website, www.andrewtran.asia. Before we get into it, smash that subscribe button and click notifications whether or not you're listening or watching this. It helps me a ton and it helps other like-minded people find these episodes a lot easier. Now let's get on with the show. Allan, welcome to the show.
Andrew, thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
No, pleasure's all mine. Hey guys, for anyone who's watching or listening, we're gonna have a really awesome episode today. We're going to talk all things about sales, and with Allan, he's going to give you all these amazing tips and insights around leveling up your sales game coming through. But for anyone who isn't familiar with who you are, Allan, would you mind explaining to the whole world what you do?
Yeah, sure. So in sales now for, I think it's 27 years, if I count correctly. Most of it was, I did a lot of B2B, but I spent a lot of time in B2C, meaning in-home sales. I'd go into a house and like my first official job was I had to sell sunrooms. Had to walk into a house and try to sell a $40,000 sunroom in 2 hours. And if you didn't do it, you lost a customer. There was no follow-up. There was nothing. One call closed. So that's what I cut my teeth doing. Figured out how to not be the typical salesperson that they train you to be. I became a salesperson who really listened and cared. And then I became the top sales rep at Anderson Windows for years. And then I wrote a book, and the book became a bestseller. Kind of just talked about my philosophies on how you can sell without actually being the salesperson that everybody hates. And not only how you will sell more doing that, but you feel better about yourself, because a lot of problem with salespeople is they don't like who they are. They don't like being salespeople. They're doing it. They feel like they need to turn into a salesperson. And my book and my teachings talk about how ways that you don't have to do that. You feel good about yourself. Your customers feel great about you. You just start selling more stuff. So that's where I am today. And you and I met on LinkedIn, and here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's gonna probably lead on to the first question, but just real quickly, you talked about selling in a different approach. What's the kind of main methodology around your approach?
Well, what happens is, every company you join, they have to have a sales process. You do have to have a sales process. The problem is the sales process has never been about the customer. The sales process has always been about the product. It's always been about selling the product. And this is how you do it. Like that sunroom company I mentioned, I went out when I first hired, it was 10 days of training. I'll never forget it, in Buffalo, New York. And the first 9.5 days was about the product. To this day, I could tell you the aluminum thickness and the screw length of a sunroom, an 18 by 20 sunroom. It was like you had to know this inside and out. And then the last half of the training, the last half of the last day was like, okay, this is how you sell it. And it still wasn't about asking, trying to create a rapport with the customer or finding their needs or seeing what their problems are. It was literally, this is how you get the customer to, you tell them the price, and then these are the objections, and this is how you handle the one of 5 objections that they give you. So to answer your question, everybody teaches a process. The process is not trained to sell. It's trained to do a product demo. And most reps ignore the fact that the customer actually has a problem. And they dump a bunch of features at the prospect. And the prospect may have one issue that they want solved, but you're throwing 20 different features at them that solves 20 different issues. And you lose the sale because you're not paying attention. You're not listening. Once I realized that the training out there was backward, that's when I decided to say, I got to lead with the customer, not the product. And everything changed for me.
Yeah, nice. I like how you kind of framed it as like, hey, we got to solve that problem. We got to identify and solve that problem for that customer first. And then once we're able to do that, then we're able to fit in some of the features that will relate back to solving that customer's problem, whilst building that rapport. And I think that's super important and relevant, especially I think in nowadays when you meet young sales reps who, like you said, they're just really in it for a bit of a paycheck. They're not really in it, and so they try to follow these all these different principles from all the sales reps. They've read all these books, but then they forget that number one element, which is how do you build that rapport in the first 5 minutes with a stranger, and then how do you identify casually in terms of their problem, so their needs basis, and then begin towards like solving that problem through potentially your product or service coming in. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And like many of the seminars that I do, I always start by asking, like, let's say I did a seminar for the, trades industry, and there's plumbers, electricians, and painters and roofers in the room. And I'll say, okay. And I'll point to someone, what do you sell? And the guy say, well, I sell roofs. I'm like, no, you don't. What do you sell? I sell windows. No, you don't. What do you sell? I sell plumbing. So everyone always, when you say, what do you sell? They say what they sell. I'm like, no. When someone asked me what I sold, when I sold Andersen Windows, I would say I sell the solution to the drafty living room that the customer is having. I sell the solution to the high energy bills that they can't afford to pay anymore. Well, how do you do that? Oh, well, I have a window that can do that, but I don't sell the window. I don't walk in selling a window. I'm like, oh, this is your problem. Now I have a way to fix it. But I'm not going to walk in and say, here's my window, when maybe they have a problem with their door. Like, that's what reps do. They just come right in and they start, boom, here we go. Let's go. Here are all the features. Let me show you everything. Oh, wait a minute. I don't even, I need a front door. I don't need a window. So always start with the problem that you solve, not the product.
Right. Nice. And I think that probably leads into that first question I was going to ask you anyway, when it comes to common mistakes that sales reps make when it comes to losing that sale at the end of the day, besides, not properly identifying their problem or the customer's need first. Like, what would be another kind of common mistake that sales reps make?
Oh, I think the biggest, and you can attest to this because you're on LinkedIn as much as I am, is we're going right to the pitch. You get the message. Hey, Andrew, this is Tony. We have a lot of people in our network that have the same black hair and would love to connect. And by the way, I have this amazing widget that does this and takes, saves 4 hours a week. Here's my calendar link. Would you like to get together? And it amazes me that they actually think that works. Now, to quote a statistic, 1.5% of the time it does work. So that's why you still keep getting them.
Yeah.
But 1% of that type of reach out is successful, but people still do it when there's such a better, more time efficient way to reach out to prospects rather than going right into a sales pitch. That to me is really one of the big issues today, even on LinkedIn, but even in networking functions, even in regular conversations, they go right to their pitch. And once you go right to the pitch, people don't want to talk to you anymore.
Exactly. And like, I run speed networking events, like business speed networking events all the time, like here in Asia.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and in Asia, but I mean, you can also say like in America as well, like there are a lot of foreigners that live here as well. People just don't know how to create a rapport in a business setting.
Nope.
And so they go straight into, hey, what do you do? Oh, I do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like straight into work. And so one of the games I do tell that I show people is like, hey, for the first 5 minutes, do not talk about work when you introduce yourself to someone. To try and avoid talking about work. Try avoid using the words what do you do? And
what do you do, right?
Like just avoid saying those words. Say everything but that. Hey, how's the blue sky? Hey, create small talk. And I think that is a lost art, especially in this day and age. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree with 100%.
Yeah. Actually, that is a really cool. That is a really cool insight, and that's a really cool common mistakes that I see. Now that you've kind of explained it to me, I'm like, yeah, I feel that as well.
Yeah, I'm laying in bed today, and because I'm sick, as you know from the pre-call,
Yep.
and every couple hours I went and checked my phone, and I had, I think, 7 of those messages today in LinkedIn. Just 7, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm sick. Leave me alone." It was even worse.
It's like those classic pickup lines, and you ask the guys like, "Hey, does it even work?" And it's like, well, for the one time it does, it nullifies the 99 times it didn't. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah. So, all good. But hey, I wanted to kind of touch on something that is really relevant in today's world, now that we live in a COVID era type of world. Whilst we live in COVID, and as we go through a sales problem and we look to identify customers' needs, is there anything that you've seen within the sales process or in the needs analysis that a sales rep will go through that has changed? Is there one aspect within a process that needs to be dialed up in this kind of COVID era?
Well, the obvious thing is everything moved on to online,
Yep.
and to be honest, I think one of the good things that's come out of COVID, as awful as it's been, is the fences around the entire world have come down. Like, I don't think you and I would ever met if COVID didn't happen and I had to reinvent myself online. I had to start doing everything I did on LinkedIn, and you and I met. Would we have met otherwise? Probably not. So that's the great thing that happened about COVID. The entire world, went into the online atmosphere. The problem though, now is the Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And especially if you're a company that needs to buy something, you are like, oh, I got to do another sales presentation on Zoom. I got to do another. And you feel fatigued because all the sales presentations are the same. It's not about your problem. It's about all the features, and it's exhausting. So the only thing that has changed in the approach is doing it online, but really taking the time as if you're in person to find out what the issues are. Because if I'm a business owner and I'm looking for a new accountant or whatever, or I'm looking for new software, and the first 3 people I speak to say, let me give you a product demo, and they're demoing the software. And yeah, it's probably cool, but half of the stuff I don't need. I don't need half of the stuff that you're showing me. And then the third one said, I can spend an hour showing the product demo. What is it that you are having trouble with? Well, I'm really having trouble with my inventory. Let me take you to the inventory page. Let me show you that. Now you got my attention, because I'm like, that's my problem. I don't care about the checks and balances and everything else the software does. I want to know how I can figure out my inventory structure. And you took me to that because because I asked the question. I didn't just show you a product demo. And all of these technical demos that happen online are exhausting, are fatiguing, and you don't separate yourself ever. You just become another person. And then when you become just that another person, you become a commodity. And when your product becomes a commodity, you're dead in the water. Then it's just down to price. And if you don't have the best price, you're not going to get anybody.
That's cool. Do you think that is the same case between B2B and B2C?
Well, this is more B2B. B2C, again, it really depends on, like B2C is still, obviously now COVID has opened up. So B2C is still going to be more in face, like people, like I do a lot of training with the trades, home builders and carpenters and things. They have to go meet people in their homes to figure out what project they need. Prior to talking with me, a typical contractor would walk in, ripped jeans, baseball cap on backward, crappy looking truck outside, and they want the job. And it's not rocket science, guys. You just got to fix your appearance first. You got to become the professional contractor, almost like you got to become the anti-salesperson. You become the anti-contractor, because there's 2 people that the world hates: salespeople and contractors. Every that survey, the top 5 professions people hate, salespeople and contractors are always in the top 5. And I deal with a lot of contractors, and I tell them that. I'm like, you got 2 things. You're not only a contractor, you're still trying to sell them stuff. So they really hate your guts. So you have to figure out how to overcome that. And again, you just do it by dealing with the problem that they have first, and then how what you offer will be the solution to that problem. Yeah, it's not. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but it's just amazing how many people don't do that.
Definitely. So it's more about like spending more time in the qualifying stage to really ascertain some of the needs that the prospect wants or needs, and then look towards kind of finessing that into a conversation a lot easier.
Well, here's an example. Like, let's say I'm doing a training session with a remodeler now. He does kitchens and bathrooms. Typically, he'd walk in, they say, I need a new bathroom. He'd go right in, start measuring with his tape measure and say, okay, let's sit down and let's look at the tile options. And I always say, well, did you ever ask them why they want a new bathroom? He'd be like, no. Find out why. Oh, you need a new bathroom. Let's have a seat. Sit at the kitchen table. So why do you want a new bathroom? Well, I want a new bathroom because mine's freezing. Tile is falling off. I hate the way it smells after it's all wet. Whatever. Those are reasons. Okay. And you don't like the tile. What don't you like about the tile? Just dig in. You will discover so much to make that job theirs now. Now you say, okay, well, you obviously you don't like pink, yellow, and red tile. We're going to stay away from those. Now you're listening to me like, oh God, this guy's a breath of fresh air. He's not like the other 3 idiot contractors who were in here. So always ask why. Why do you want a new bathroom? I want a new bathroom because mine is old. Okay, well, what is it about being old that you don't like? What is it that you're looking for? What feel do you want for, just question after question, and they're just going to feel so heard. And you're now even building your value for your price as you're doing this. Because again, everyone else is just going to show up with an estimate. You're going to actually come up with a price that's built on the questions that they answered.
And just to add to that, like as much as you want to ask questions, you want to do it in a way that builds rapport at the same time. You don't want to, you don't want to be this clinical person with,
Oh yeah, exactly. Right.
yeah, you got to actually finesse it in. And I think that's also something that I see a lot of young sales reps try to do here, especially here whilst I'm here in Vietnam. You get all these like young, like I'm a sales rep, and I'm like, what did you do back home? I did nothing. I did nothing to do with sales. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, pitch me. Like, how do you actually sell? Like, what do you sell? Is probably the first thing I probably ask them, and then they'll tell me, and then I'm like, okay, well, how do you look at this particular objective? And then they'll tell me, and I'm like, man, are you quoting? Are you reading off a book or something? Like, what the hell?
Right.
Like, just talk to me. Don't
Mhm.
don't treat me like just another number. Like, treat me as a human being. And I like that approach. So yeah, just to add to what you're trying to say, asking those questions, but doing it in a way that is humanized in an approach, and adds empathy towards it. I think that's really
Yeah.
important as well.
The
Yeah.
the analogy of being a doctor and diagnosing and figuring out the problem in an empathetic, kind way, where the answers have nothing to do with whether they're going to buy or not. You want to diagnose. You want to sit there and figure out their problem like a doctor would, as opposed to a salesperson reading off a script of 20 questions that they ask the same to every single customer. So,
Finishing up, I asked everyone this question around advice. And so, Alan, asking you this question, if you were to speak to a chief sales officer around reframing a problem, what kind of advice would you give them?
reframing a problem that the customer's having or
Yeah,
that the rep is having.
no, that like a chief sales officer is trying to solve. So, what kind of advice would you try and give them if they're looking at reframing a problem that they're trying to solve?
You can never go wrong with getting into storytelling and getting people to like you that way. And you can reframe problems by making the customer understand the problem better by using a story. I have a full chapter in my book about storytelling with analogies and metaphors. It's so much better. Analogies and metaphors are around to help people understand difficult concepts easier. That's why they're there. And when you say, your furnace in your basement is like a tired old dinosaur huffing and puffing to keep your house warm with these old windows, that sticks in their mind. That's like the problem is you're spending a lot on energy. Okay. Your furnace is running a lot. Okay. But if I reframe that and say, picture your furnace to be like this tired, old, worn out dinosaur laying on your floor trying to keep up. And you've changed all your windows. And now he's on a chaise lounge and he's got a little Mai Tai in his hand and he's relaxing a little bit because he doesn't have to work as hard. Those images stay in the customer's mind because it's easier to say, wow, my furnace is going to work a lot less because of these new windows. And that's all it takes. Everyone else says the same thing. Your furnace is going to work a lot less because of new windows, but they didn't talk about it. They didn't put an image in the customer's head. And that image could very well be the difference between they going with you and someone else.
I'm
Gotta
gonna,
use that.
yeah, I'm gonna use it. I normally use the car analogy a lot because the car
Would tell me what
analogy.
that is.
So if for instance, if you were to, if someone's like, oh, what's the difference between you as a consultant versus another consultant? And I'm like, well, it's all about perception, right? So everyone, like a car, like you have a Toyota, you have a Ford, and then you have a Mercedes. And so the only difference between the two is the story that you tell. And so my story is blah 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 blah, and then I make that relatable back to what they're trying to do, who they are, what and also if it's a brand, if it's a problem I'm solving as a consultant in terms of their branding or their sales or their marketing, then I kind of tie that back into what they're doing. I was like, hey, it's about a story that you tell. So what's your story? And then it puts it back onto them, and then they have to talk about their story. And then going back to what you were just saying before about, hey, asking these questions, diagnosing the problem, creating these needs analysis coming through, but as you're building rapport. And I think that's how I use the car analogy for it. But there's different ways. I know a lot of salespeople use different ways of car analogy or anything like that. But this is just my way. It's a simple way to kind of remember at the same time because everyone drives a car at some point.
And it's memorable. That's the thing. Stories are memorable. Stories will differentiate you. They'll make you stick out. And again, you can even take stories and put it into the context of your actual product. One of the funny stories I like to tell is, let's say you back in the colonial days, you sold horses, okay? And you go to the auction and you walk up and you say, okay, here's my horse. He's 6'7". He's brown. He's got long mane here. He's 875 pounds. He wears this size horseshoe, blah, blah, blah. This is how much he is. Great. You leave. Now I show up my horse. I'm like, yeah, this is my horse right here. This is the horse that Paul Revere rode when he actually had to warn America that the British were coming. First bid. What horse is not only going to stay in someone's mind, but is he probably going to sell? Because a horse has a story. So if you can do the same thing with your product, I always say that a baseball is just a baseball until Mickey Mantle hit it over the center field fence in a World Series game. It's no longer a baseball. That baseball has context, has a story. So do that with your products. Give them context, give them a story. Tell a story about how this product helped another customer, helped another company. They want to put themselves in that story of success, and they want to own your product.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Oh, man. All right. So just finishing up, Allan, for anyone who wants to reach out to you, what are the best channels to reach out to you by?
I would love to talk to anyone. You can find me on LinkedIn, Allan Langer, Allan, Langer, Langer. All of my stuff is actually on, you ever hear a flow page? It's almost like a link tree. So if you go to flow.page, so flow.page/Allan Langer, all of my links there, my website, all of my social media, my book, I have a nonprofit with my daughter, everything is there under flow page. So flow.page/Allan Langer, you'll find me.
Nice. And for anyone who's watching or listening, I'll put them in the show notes below. So Allan, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And for anyone who's watching or listening, thank you for coming on, and I'll see you on the next show.